The elevator doors slid open on the 42nd floor, and there he stood. Julian Vance, 28 years old, wearing a three-piece tailored suit, and possessing exactly 0 days of actual banking experience. His face was already red before I even stepped out of the cabin. For 10 years, I configured every firewall defense shielding your father's $4 billion banking portal, I said. My voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. Now you are firing me because I left an hour early once. Julian's smirk was the kind that came from a lifetime of never hearing the word no. Leave the building, Evelyn. Security will escort you out. I pulled the access card from my lanyard, the building keys from my pocket, and dropped them on his assistant's desk. The metallic clatter echoed through the marble lobby. You have 10 minutes before all secure deposits freeze permanently, I said, turning toward the elevator. Enjoy the audit. The color drained from his face. Welcome to the channel, where we share stories of workplace justice that remind us why integrity matters more than institutional power. If these stories resonate with you, and you believe in holding the line between right and wrong, joining our community would mean the world. We are on a journey to reach 6,000 subscribers. People who understand that respect is not optional, it is foundational. The subscribe button is there whenever you are ready. My name is Evelyn Rossi, and until approximately 11 minutes ago, I was the Senior Infrastructure Security Architect at Vanguard Trust, one of the oldest private banking institutions in the United States. My title sounds impressive, but my beginnings were anything, however. I grew up in a two-bedroom apartment where my mother cleaned office buildings at night, and my father drove a delivery truck. They taught me that everyone from the chief executive officer to the custodian deserves the same courtesy, the same respect, the same dignity. That foundation shaped everything about how I approached my career. And ultimately, it is what brought me to this moment. Vanguard Trust was not just any bank. Founded in the late 19th century, it catered exclusively to ultra-high net worth clients, old money families, tech billionaires, and sovereign wealth administrators. It was the kind of place where minimum account balances started at $25 million, and client privacy was more sacred than any regulatory requirement from the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. I joined a decade ago, fresh from my cybersecurity master's degree and a brutal 3-year stint at a major consultancy firm. The hiring manager, Beatrice Holloway, saw past my resume gaps and student loan debt. She saw someone who understood that technology without ethics was just weaponized code. We do not just need someone who can build walls. Beatrice told me during my 3rd interview. We need someone who understands what we are protecting and why it matters. I was 27, and it was the first time anyone in power had suggested that the why mattered as much as the how. My first project was overhauling the authentication protocols for our client portal. The existing system was an absolute disaster. Some sections were still running on frameworks from 2 decades prior, while others were bolted on by long-gone contractors. Nobody had comprehensive documentation. Nobody had a full system map. I spent 6 months living in server logs and authentication tables, building documentation from scratch, mapping data flows that had not been reviewed in 10 years. When I finally presented my findings to the executive committee, I crashed our test environment 17 different ways in 15 minutes. The room went silent. Richard Vance, Julian's father and the chief executive officer at the time, looked at me with an expression somewhere between horror and admiration. How long to fix this? He asked. 18 months with the right team and budget, I said. Or 18 days before someone with bad intentions finds what I just showed you. I had budget approval in 48 hours. The portal reconstruction consumed 2 years of my life. I hand-selected a team of 8 detail-oriented perfectionists who treated security like a sacred duty. We built something truly extraordinary. Quantum-resistant encryption, biometric authentication with liveness detection, behavioral analysis that could identify account compromise within seconds. But the real innovation was the human design. I built in exceptions for life's realities. Parents had emergencies. People got sick. The Family and Medical Leave Act was something I took seriously, ensuring our human resources infrastructure tied into our access protocols without penalizing legally protected absences. I created escalation protocols that allowed for human judgment, verified emergency access, and grace periods for extenuating circumstances. Beatrice supported every single decision. Security that does not account for humanity is not security, she would say. It is just institutional cruelty. The portal went live with 0 breaches and 0 unauthorized access attempts that made it past the first firewall. 3 months after launch, Richard called me into his corner office. "Evelyn, you have built something remarkable," he said, sliding a letter across his massive mahogany desk. "Senior infrastructure security architect, a 20% salary increase, and equity in the firm. Equity at Vanguard Trust was unheard of for someone of my background. They did not give equity to people like me." "Say you will keep protecting what we have built here," Richard said. "Not just the systems, but the trust." I took that responsibility incredibly seriously, perhaps too seriously. I was still the first one reviewing security logs every single morning, still personally testing every update, still responding to after-hours alerts while colleagues sent junior staff. My team knew they could call me at 3 in the morning if something seemed wrong. I built a culture where asking questions was not weakness. It was a profound responsibility. Everything was running flawlessly under a culture of mutual respect and rigorous compliance. Richard Vance suffered a massive stroke. He survived, but the sharp-minded strategist who had built a $4 billion institution could not even sign his own name anymore. The board appointed his son, Julian, as the interim chief executive officer. Julian had been consulting for 3 years, showing up for executive lunches, collecting a salary that would have funded my entire department. His degree was in art history from a college. His family had donated a library to do so. His only work experience was 2 years at his godfather's venture capital firm. For his first executive meeting as chief executive officer, he arrived 20 minutes late with a coffee cup and 3 strategic consultants who looked fresh out of college. "We need to talk about operational efficiency," Julian announced, pulling up a slide deck created that morning. "Our cost structure is bloated. We are implementing a 20% budget cut across all technology departments, effective immediately." The room erupted. A 20% cut was not trimming fat. It was amputating essential functions. "That is impossible," I said. "We are already running lean. A cut like that would compromise security protocols protecting every single client account. Furthermore, it risks non-compliance with strict data protection regulations." Julian looked at me like I was a piece of furniture that had suddenly started talking. "And you are?" "Evelyn Rossi," I replied. "I architected the security infrastructure that has kept this institution breach-free for 8 years. "In the real world, we have to make tough choices," Julian retorted. "I am sure you will figure something out." Beatrice caught up with me in the hallway afterward. "He does not understand what he is doing," she said. "Then make him understand," I replied. "The board gave him full operational authority. We have 6 months to prove he can handle it, or they will consider outside candidates." I wondered if we would even make it 6 weeks. The cuts started immediately, but they were surgical strikes designed to hurt. Julian targeted anyone who had questioned him, anyone with loyalty to Richard. Beatrice was forced into early retirement with a fraction of her earned benefits, a clear violation of standard severance protocols. She fought it until the stress sent her to the hospital with heart palpitations. Then came the mid-level managers who had built institutional knowledge over decades. Forced retirements, sudden performance improvement plans for people who had received stellar reviews for 20 years. My department lost 2 senior engineers in the first month. Both had families. Both got 2 weeks of severance despite years of impeccable service, flagrantly ignoring customary compensation packages for their tenure. "We are bringing in contractors," Harrison Brooks, the new chief operating officer, told me. "Contractors do not have the security clearance for this work," I explained. "Then get them clearance," he demanded. "That is a 6-month background check minimum," I said. "Then work faster to cover the gaps." I started working 70-hour weeks, monitoring systems that used to have dedicated oversight, running updates that used to require a team of 3. My family stopped asking when I would be home. My doctor started using words like burnout and unsustainable, warning me about the severe health risks. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration guidelines regarding workplace stress were being thoroughly ignored, but I had a duty to protect the portal. The systems held. Every morning, we were still breach-free, still protecting every client account, still maintaining the trust Richard had asked me to safeguard. Then came the Tuesday that changed everything. My mother called at 2 in the afternoon. It was highly unusual because she never interrupted work unless it was genuinely urgent. "Evelyn, it is your dad. He collapsed at work. They are taking him to the hospital. Suspected heart attack." I immediately informed my team that I had a family emergency and ran. Under the Family and Medical Leave Act, I was completely within my rights to tend to an immediate family member's severe health crisis. I found my father in the emergency department, conscious but looking gray. They were preparing him for a cardiac catheterization. My mother was trying to be strong, but I saw the same fear from when I was 12, and my dad lost his job, and when I was 16 and she had her cancer scare. I held her hand. I filled out insurance paperwork. I called my brother. I did what families do when the world narrows to a hospital waiting room and prayer. The procedure took 4 hours and required 2 stents. The cardiologist said he would be fine with medication and lifestyle changes, but he needed overnight observation. I stayed until 8 in the evening, until my father was settled and sleeping, and until my mother's sister arrived. When I finally left, I was completely hollowed out. I went home to my studio apartment and let myself fall apart, knowing I had fulfilled my familial duty while following protocol by notifying my subordinates. The next morning, I arrived at 7:30, 30 minutes earlier than my usual start time. Harrison Brooks was waiting at my desk. "Julian wants to see you now." Julian's office had been completely redecorated in glass and chrome. He was sitting behind the desk, flanked by Harrison and Eleanor Hayes, the new Chief Human Resources Officer. "Have a seat, Evelyn." The guest chair was deliberately lower than his desk. It was a power play so obvious it would have been funny if my stomach was not churning. "You left work yesterday at 2:15 without formal approval, without following proper procedures," Julian said. The air left my lungs. "My father had a heart attack," I said. I informed my team and left. "Your contract specifies that any deviation from core hours requires supervisor approval a minimum of 2 hours in advance," Julian retorted. "It was my father's heart attack. By definition, it was not previously documented. Furthermore, the Family and Medical Leave Act protects emergency leave for immediate family medical crises." Eleanor slid a thick folder across the desk. "We have been reviewing your performance. Multiple instances of missed meetings, declined requests from leadership, resistance to new directives." I opened the folder. It was complete fiction. Meetings I had never been invited to were listed as absences. Declined requests were my firm refusals to compromise security protocols and violate federal financial compliance laws. Resistance was my insistence on following regulatory guidelines set by the Securities and Exchange Commission. "This is entirely fabricated," I said flatly. "That is your interpretation," Harrison said. "We see a pattern of someone who thinks the rules do not apply to her presence." They had been building this fraudulent case for weeks, waiting for a single misstep to weaponize against me. "We are terminating your employment." "Effective immediately," Julian announced. 2 weeks severance and standard insurance continuation information. Security will escort you out. 10 years. 10 years of 18-hour days and early morning crisis responses, reduced to a meager 2-week severance package. "You cannot run the portal without me," I said quietly. Julian actually laughed. "Nobody is irreplaceable. We will be fine." The pieces suddenly clicked together in my mind. This was not about leaving early. This was about the budget. They were getting rid of the highest-paid individual contributor, replacing deep institutional knowledge with cheap contractors who would never dare push back against reckless directives. I stood up slowly, making sure my presence commanded the room. "For 10 years, I configured every firewall defense shielding your father's $4 billion banking portal," I said, letting each word land with absolute precision. "Now you are firing me because I left an hour early once for a documented medical emergency." Julian's smirk was already forming. "Leave the building," he said. I pulled out my access card, my key ring containing physical backups to every secure room in the entire building, and dropped them heavily on Eleanor's desk. You have exactly 10 minutes before all secure deposits freeze permanently, I stated calmly. Enjoy the regulatory audit. Julian's face went from smug to confused, and then to genuinely afraid. What are you talking about the situation? Harrison demanded, his voice raising an octave. The portal has a security protocol requiring administrative authentication every 12 hours, I explained. It is a fail-safe against compromise. If the primary architect does not confirm system integrity twice daily, everything locks down to prevent unauthorized access. I designed it specifically to prevent the kind of massive data breach that happens when knowledge transfer does not occur properly. This was not entirely true, but it was close enough to reality that nobody in that room had the technical expertise to contradict me. You are bluffing, Julian said, his voice wavering slightly. The morning authentication occurred at 7:30. The evening authentication is due at 7:30. It is currently 7:22. You have 8 minutes. Harrison was already frantically calling the IT department. Nobody was answering. They were all new contractors who strictly worked a standard 9-to-5 schedule. Exactly, I said. This is corporate blackmail, Eleanor stated, trying to sound authoritative. No, it is robust architecture, I corrected her presence. I built a system that prioritizes security over convenience. You are welcome to override it if you can find someone with my exact credentials and knowledge. It should take them about 6 months. You have 6 minutes. Julian's phone rang loudly in the tense silence. He answered it, his face growing even paler. One of our top-tier clients is trying to access their account. The portal is showing an authentication error. It was actually just a coincidence. Someone probably mistyped their password, but the timing was absolutely perfect. 3 minutes early, I noted casually. Pre-lockdown protocols are initiating. Fix this, Julian demanded. Please. What are your requirements? I had never heard him say the word please before. I need you to understand something, I said, leaning forward. I did not build that portal as a career move. I built it because your father trusted me to protect something that truly matters. Hundreds of clients trust you with their life savings and generational wealth. That is not just data, it is trust. And you were about to gut the entire security infrastructure because you did not want to put in the effort to understand what it actually does. 2 minutes. What do you want? Julian asked again, panic fully setting in. I thought about Beatrice in the hospital, about the brilliant engineers let go with illegal severance packages. I thought about my father recovering in a hospital bed. I want an emergency board meeting tonight, I said. I want every single board member to hear exactly what you have done to this institution. The essential positions eliminated, the security protocols compromised, the institutional knowledge destroyed, all because you were too arrogant to learn the business. That is not happening, Harrison interjected. 90 seconds, I replied, looking at my watch. Julian looked at Harrison, who looked at Eleanor, who stared firmly at the floor. Fine. I will call the meeting right now. Just fix it. One more thing, I added. Everyone forced out in the last 6 months, including Beatrice, the engineers, and the managers, receives full reinstatement offers with back pay or a severance package equal to 1 month per year of service. Their choice. That is millions of dollars, Eleanor gasped. 45 seconds, I said. And it is a tiny fraction of what you will lose when federal regulators investigate why your portal locked out $4 billion in client assets. Julian frantically grabbed his phone. Call an emergency board meeting for tonight at 8. All members. Code red. He looked at me, defeated. Done. I pulled out my mobile phone, opened a secure authentication application, and entered a 16-character sequence entirely from memory. System lockdown postponed for 24 hours, I announced. But that is only temporary. You need proper knowledge transfer, rigorous documentation review, and someone in my role who actually cares about more than short-term efficiency metrics. The board meeting took place in the main conference room. 11 members were present, ranging from legacy partners in their 70s to a tech entrepreneur in her 40s. The board chair, a former federal regulator, called the session to order. Julian, you called this emergency session. The floor is yours. We had a minor security incident today revealing gaps in our operational procedures. Julian began, trying to spin the narrative. I have asked Evelyn Rossi to brief the board. It was a smooth attempt to make it about security gaps rather than his catastrophic leadership failures. I stood up and connected my laptop to the projector. In 6 months, Vanguard Trust has lost 40% of its senior technology staff. We have lost over 200 years of combined institutional knowledge, including the chief technology officer, 3 senior engineers, and multiple managers who fundamentally understood our custom infrastructure. I pulled up my presentation. This is our portal architecture. Every layer was custom built over 10 years. It is not an off-the-shelf product. You cannot hand it to a discount contractor and expect them to understand it in a week. I advance to the next slide. These security protocols protect $4 billion in client assets. Every single protocol requires specialized knowledge. As of this morning, I am the only person in this entire organization with a comprehensive understanding of how these critical systems interact. The board chair leaned forward, her brow furrowed. Why were we not informed of this dangerous consolidation of knowledge? I raised these exact concerns in 3 separate reports over the last 4 months, I explained. Each report was dismissed by current leadership as resistance to efficiency measures. I pulled up the indisputable email records. Furthermore, this morning, I was terminated for leaving work early during a documented family medical emergency. My father suffered a heart attack. I followed standard protocol, informed my team, and left under the protections of the Family and Medical Leave Act. I was fired the very next day. The room went completely silent. A senior board member spoke up. "Julian, is this accurate?" I displayed the fabricated performance documentation on the screen. These were the stated reasons for my termination. Meetings, I was never invited to do so. Security protocols, I correctly refused to compromise. Emergency responses outside of core hours that were ignored entirely. I looked at Julian directly. I built something extraordinary for this institution because Richard Vance asked me to protect something that mattered. In 6 months, you have systematically dismantled the human infrastructure that made that protection possible. The meeting continued for 3 grueling hours. Every decision Julian had made came under intense scrutiny. The budget cuts targeting experienced staff, the contractor relationships with zero financial services background, the forced retirements violating the spirit of employment agreements and labor laws. By 10 o'clock, Julian looked like he had aged a decade. The board chair called for a brief recess, then asked Julian, Harrison, and Eleanor to step outside. When everyone returned, the chair's expression was carefully neutral. "Julian, the board recognizes you have been operating under extraordinary circumstances. Your father's health crisis thrust you into a role you were not prepared for, and we take responsibility for our inadequate oversight." Julian's tense shoulders started to relax slightly. However, the decisions made have put this institution at an unacceptable level of risk. Effective immediately, you are being moved to a special projects role focused strictly on client relations. We will be bringing in an experienced interim chief operating officer with a strong financial services background. He was being publicly demoted. "Evelyn." The chair turned to me. "The board would like to offer you a revised contract. Chief Security Officer, reporting directly to the Board of Directors, with full authority over all technology infrastructure decisions. Your first priority will be rebuilding the team and documenting comprehensive knowledge transfer procedures." A board member added, "The position comes with appropriate executive compensation, full equity, and our formal apology." I looked at Julian, who was humiliated in front of everyone whose approval he had spent his life seeking. Despite everything, I felt a flicker of pity. "I accept," I said, on 2 non-negotiable conditions. 1. Everyone forced out receives the exact reinstatement or generous severance offer I outlined earlier. 2. Julian gets proper executive training. Not as a punishment, but as an investment. He is Richard's son. This is his legacy. He deserves a legitimate chance to grow into it. Julian looked up at me, something in his rigid expression finally cracking. "Why would you do that?" "Because my parents taught me that everyone deserves dignity, even when they have made massive mistakes. Especially then." The chair nodded slowly. "The board accepts both conditions." The meeting adjourned late into the night. Board members approached me to apologize, expressing immense relief that someone had finally spoken the truth. The tech entrepreneur was the last to leave. That took extraordinary courage, she noted. The portal lockdown threat, how much of it was real? I smiled warmly. Enough to make the point. She laughed. Remind me never to play poker with you. My phone rang as I left the building. It was Beatrice. I heard the board chair's assistant called her, offering full reinstatement, back pay, and a formal apology. Are you coming back? I asked. I do not know yet, she admitted. My doctor wants me to seriously consider retirement, but knowing I have the choice. Evelyn, you gave me back my dignity. You gave me a chance when nobody else would. I just returned the favor, I replied. The next 3 months were controlled chaos. I hired back 2 of the brilliant engineers who had been let go. I brought in 3 new senior staff members, heavily emphasizing ethics as much as technical expertise. I created redundant documentation systems, ensuring nobody, including myself, was ever a single point of failure again. Julian stayed in his special projects role and surprisingly engaged deeply with the executive development program. He shadowed every single department, asking the important questions he should have asked 6 months earlier, and actually listening to the answers. I did not understand what I did not understand, he told me during a check-in meeting. I thought leadership meant having all the answers on day 1. Your father struggled too, I assured him. He just had enough humility to admit it and ask for help. Richard returned to the office the following January in a wheelchair, but mentally as sharp as ever. He had heard everything that transpired. He asked to see me on his first day back. Evelyn, he said, his speech still slightly slurred. I am told you saved my life's work. I protected it exactly like you asked me to, I replied. My son tells me you also protected him. That took more grace than most people possess. The team I built became something I am genuinely, profoundly proud of the matter. Not just technically excellent, but deeply committed to ethical standards. We implemented a mandatory trust check rule. Any team member could pause any project to examine whether we were truly honoring our immense responsibility to our clients. We used it 17 times the first year. Every single time, it made us better. The culture spread throughout Vanguard Trust, becoming a core institutional practice. 0 breach rate, highest client satisfaction scores, and industry-leading employee retention. Sometimes standing up means you lose. But sometimes, you stand up, you fight for what is right, and you build something that lasts. I chose to fight, and I won. Not perfectly, not without significant personal cost, but enough to make it truly matter. That is all any of us can hope for, to matter in the moments that count. The impact of this cultural shift was profound and lasting. Every single day, the new Security Operations Center buzzed with a renewed sense of purpose and dedication. The junior engineers who had once been afraid to speak up now regularly contributed to our architectural reviews, bringing fresh perspectives that strengthened our defenses. We implemented a rigorous continuous integration and continuous deployment pipeline that prioritized automated security testing at every stage, significantly reducing the risk of human error. Our clients noticed the difference, expressing increased confidence in our ability to protect their sensitive financial data in an increasingly complex threat landscape. We started hosting quarterly security summits, inviting industry experts to share their knowledge and challenge our assumptions. The transformation of our physical workspace reflected this new philosophy. We knocked down the isolated cubicles and created open collaboration zones, equipped with interactive whiteboards and state-of-the-art monitoring displays. The environment fosters a sense of shared responsibility, where problems were crowdsourced and solutions were rigorously debated. We instituted a mentorship program that paired our senior architects with promising new hires, ensuring the transfer of not just technical skills, but also the ethical framework that guided our decision-making. We focused on building a resilient system, one that could withstand not just malicious attacks, but also the inevitable failures of hardware and software components. We conducted regular tabletop exercises, simulating various disaster scenarios and refining our response protocols. The culture of blame was entirely eradicated, replaced by a culture of learning and continuous improvement. We embraced transparency, openly sharing our successes and our failures, recognizing that both provided valuable lessons. This comprehensive approach to security and operational excellence became a defining characteristic of our organization, setting a new standard for the industry. The legacy of our struggles was not just a robust technology platform, but a vibrant, engaged, and highly effective team dedicated to the relentless pursuit of perfection and the unwavering protection of our clients. We built a system that was not just secure, but also adaptable and scalable, capable of meeting the evolving needs of our business. We invested heavily in training and professional development, ensuring our team remained at the forefront of the rapidly changing cybersecurity landscape. This investment paid off exponentially as our team developed innovative solutions to complex problems, patenting several proprietary technologies. Our commitment to excellence was recognized with numerous industry awards, further solidifying our reputation as a leader in the field. The journey was challenging, demanding countless hours of hard work and sacrifice, but the results were unequivocally worth the effort. We created a legacy that would endure for generations, a testament to the power of vision, dedication, and uncompromising ethical standards. The experience fundamentally changed me, forging a stronger, more resilient leader, capable of navigating the most complex organizational challenges with grace and determination. We are Vanguard Trust, and we protect what matters most. Hold the line.